Welcome back to another episode of Lost in the Farmer's Market Garden Life, where today we're looking at this specimen here, which isn't exactly, its flower's not in its prime, it's on wane. However, this is by far not the end of the show. Now, what is this plant? And why is it so small? Mm. The scientific name for this plant is Canna X generalis. The variety is Canova orange shades, and it is commonly called the canna lily. I gotta do it, Captain, but don't have the power. Yeah, no, I had to sneak one of those in there. But anyway, Canna, Canna. So yeah, it, it kind of fits. But it's in the family Canaceae. Canaceae. Canopolis? Anyway, Canna comes from Canna, comes from the Greek word canna, Kanna, which means like a cane or reed, which refers probably to the central stalk and the erect habit of this plant. Now, it is native to it originates in North and South America and parts of India, but this is a hybrid, so it's native to cultivation, so to speak. Now, I've grown these plants in my career a lot, and I'll get to when I first encountered them in a moment. But before we go there, it's hardy in USDA zones 8A through 11B, though there are some sources who will say it's only hardy in warmer climates, which is patently wrong. It is a perennial, but it is what's considered a herbaceous / deciduous perennial in that it dies. It may or may not, depending on what climate you're in, die all the way back to the ground or partially. In 8A, I believe it is a die back to the ground kind of plant. At least that's what I've seen in most instances, anyway. In the test gardens, yeah, I'm pretty sure it's a die back to the ground kind of plant based on other specimens that have been here. Now, its pH range preference is 6 to 6.5. Its soil preference, it's not that selective, but it does better in enriched garden soil that gets doses of compost. Its exposure is full sun, and its height can be 30 inches to a full 4 feet. Its width can be 7 to 10 inches. And as you can see, these leaves can be pretty big, but this variety, again, I'm going to have to tell you how I got this variety and what about it caught my eye. This variety appears to be unusual. Anyway, its other names are canna, common garden canna, and Indian shot. Now, I've always known it as just plain old canna, but canna lily is a common name for it in the southeast. That's what my aunts call it. And although it is not actually a member of the lily family, it's not even closely related. It's interesting to note that it's called that. A lot of things, like with ferns, are called lilies that aren't lilies, like daylilies, which are in Hemerocallis and aren't actually a true lily, which is Lilium. Yeah. So, this plant actually used to be called Canna X hybrid at one point, and then they changed it to Canna X generalis for some reason. I've always known it as Canna generalis throughout my career, and I'm not sure what the changes are for, but whatever. Latin names change regularly, and we hear about it much more quickly than we used to. So I'm thankful for that. So I don't go around using the wrong name for weeks and months and whatever. Now, the pests of this plant include Japanese beetles, which may attack the flowers, slugs, aphids, and leaf rollers. Leaf rollers will bore a hole in the leaf and web it up so that it doesn't unfurl, and then they'll nest and pupate in there. In the case of slugs, well, they eat just about anything that their little rasping tongue can get around. And aphids may spread diseases and will cause other problems, so you have to watch for them. Now, personally in the field, I've never seen these get anything other than the beetles and the leaf rollers, and the leaf rollers are easily dispatched. And Japanese beetles, a small bucket of soapy water and you just knock them in and that's the end of it. Or rubbing alcohol will kill them instantly too. Diseases that it can get are aster yellows, canna mosaic virus, which will appear as a yellow streaking across the leaves, leaf spot, rust, and bacterial blight. I don't think I've ever seen any of these in the field thus far, but it doesn't mean they can't occur under the right conditions. Diseases are opportunists, just like insect pests. They're usually a secondary cause. Something else is wrong to cause them to be able to get in there to do the do. With the exception of leaf rollers. They're just straight jerks. That's all there is to them. Jerks. Anyway, now how did I first encounter Canna generalis? Well, ages ago, back in the beginning of my horticultural career in the 90s. I work for an organization called the Montclair Foundation, but you would know their most popular thing if you go on the internet and look up Van Vleck House and Gardens. Yeah, it was a botanical garden in the middle of Montclair, New Jersey. It occupied on at its front end an entire city block, and then on its sides, it was about half of a very long block between. I can't remember the streets now, but Van Vleck Drive is the street running up to the front, and the other two above and below evade me at the moment. But anyway, they had a long stand of Canna Generalis in red, traditional red, which is the normal color these come in. And it was sandwiched between the building's limestone walls, stucco, if not limestone walls, and the carriage house specifically, and a sidewalk, a traditional concrete sidewalk. So they were kept warm by stonework around them. And we'd have to cut down the stalks at the end of the season and mulch them hard so they could survive the winter, because that portion of New Jersey was a bit too cold for cannas to be a perennial without special preparation, which is exactly what we did. And they would get buried in snow almost every winter and would be just fine. And they'd be gorgeous in the summer. Well, the original Canna Generalis, all of them were all originally red. And then we've bred different colors in. And we've bred in like the Bengal species, which have naturally striped leaves. And then there are ones with foliage colors, deep red leaves that are almost maroon colored and so forth. But this particular specimen, which again, the flowers are on their wane, but they were just starting to extend and prepare to open when I got it. And since then have reached their peak and are where you see them today. I couldn't get this filmed sooner. But anyway, this little plant was blooming on a tiny little plant. And I thought, well, that's interesting. This must be a dwarf. A dwarf canna. Who would ever think of such a thing? It's not. It's just stunted. In fact, if you look in the pot there, and I'm going to point this out. If you look in the pot there, down the main stem, you'll see what looks like a propagation cell. Almost like a peat pellet or something. Well, this one's probably a little stunted because it got stuck in that and rooted out the wrong way. However, this plant is now side shooting, so there will be more display as long as I remove the flowers. Now, the interesting thing about canna is that their seed are viable. They're pretty large. They're about the size of a largish BB, ball bearing. So, they're not hard to find. They're in these pods that come after the flowers, and so you can easily harvest them and start your own. I think it's a few years from seed to mature plant, blooming plant, though. So just keep that in mind. Tulips take 7 years to go from seed to flower. And lilies, true lilies, are the same. So you have no idea what you're going to get. But anyway, so that's how I first was introduced to Canna Generalis. And then, of course, multiple trips down south, I started to notice they were here. And I realized this is where they're supposed to be. And what we were doing was weird. But anyway, the one thing about Canna Generalis you should know is that the rhizomes, the roots, spread. And they will slowly take over an area. And some people have rated them as semi-invasive. And Mischief is just doing what he does. Isn't that right, Mischief? Hey, Mischief. Yeah. But anyway, so, they'll do what they want. And they'll spread. And they're kind of like irises. But, a little less prone to some of the irisy problems. So, that's all I have for you today. So, as always, I swear I can't go through a video without cat butt. But anyway, that's all I have for you today. So, if you have any thoughts about Canna Generalis and what to do with it, whether or not you have random cat butt in your Canna Generalis beds, whether or not Mischief thinks he's a Canna Generalis or not, we don't know. He's a silly kitty. But if you have any comments about canna or lilies or things that are named like but actually aren't, go ahead and put them in the comments section. If you like this episode, please hit like. If you didn't, that's okay too. It's not for everybody. But if you really liked it, please subscribe. It helps the channel a lot. Now, in the description for this video, there will be a link to the Forge blog. That is on hiatus till January of next year. We've got plenty of entries up there, so you can go through past entries and reference forage foods that you can eat, including things like tortoiseshell bamboo, which is very fascinating. It's actually the bamboo, same species of bamboo that comes in the cans that you pickled indoors in salt water at the store. So, with all that said, thank you for watching, and as always, folks, keep them growing.